Winter is approaching in Alaska's Windfall Harbor, and the 70-year-old hunter is starting to worry about his biggest concern: how to get food. In previous years, he almost always hunted a deer in late autumn, enough meat to keep his family safe through the harsh winter. But this year, bad luck has followed him. 2 consecutive hunting trips had failed. If this time wasn't successful, he would likely have to borrow money to buy food. Before setting off, he carefully checked his rifle, hunting time after time. He hoped his old friend would not betray him at the critical moment. The morning frost grows thicker each day, signaling that winter is very near. This means it could be his last chance. From the windy dock, he travels about 2.5 nautical miles to an abandoned logging road. Then he continues using his compact, agile ATV to go deeper into the forest, where trucks can't reach, thereby increasing the chance of encountering prey. The entire Windbreak Bay only has over 100 residents, most of whom rely on hunting and fishing, facing competition from younger hunters. He is forced to rely on experience to find an advantage, but that determination is quickly dealt a blow. When his ATV suddenly loses power, the sound indicated that the drive belt was slipping. In the middle of nowhere, he had no choice but to fix it himself. After disassembling it for inspection, he discovered that engine oil had leaked, getting on the belt, causing it to slip and affecting power transmission. The repair would take time, and he might miss his last hunting opportunity. So he decided to take his trusty rifle and walk over 10 kilometers to the hunting grounds. For a 70-year-old man, that was no easy feat, especially since he had to stay vigilant against predators, like wolves and bears. However, walking also had its advantages. He wasn't tied down by a vehicle. He ventured deeper into the forest, and after about 7 kilometers, he began to notice clear signs of his prey. An untouched patch of ground where deer often rested, surrounded by fresh droppings and young trees, with bark rubbed off by antlers. This indicated that his target was very close, and indeed it was true. In the abandoned logging area, he saw a deer. However, it was extremely wary. Before he could even aim, it vanished without a trace. In this situation, panic would only make things worse. He quietly tracked the spot where the deer had just appeared, following the tracks it left behind. Choosing the spot where the prey will fully reveal itself depends entirely on the experienced hunter's intuition. Along the way, fresh droppings and footprints show that the distance between him and his prey has significantly shortened. After 3 hours of tracking on a small trail, he suddenly stopped. The target he was pursuing was right in front of him. He didn't hesitate. He immediately raised his gun and aimed straight at the target. When he pulled the trigger, the prey fell to the ground, but it wasn't completely incapacitated, so he had to run closer and fire another shot. Finally, he had secured food for the winter. A weight lifted from his shoulders. Though the hunt was over, the subsequent tasks were even more exhausting than hunting itself, such as processing the prey and figuring out how to transport all the meat home. For a young person, it would be nothing, but for an old man over 70, full of ailments, it was a huge challenge. To prevent the meat from spoiling, he quickly bled it, gutted it, and removed the organs. The next problem was how to get the prey back to the boat, since the ATV he used to get there was broken, forcing him to carry the deer on foot for about 10 kilometers to reach it. The boat had no equipment, no backpack. Transport seemed impossible, but don't underestimate the wisdom of an old hunter. He cut off one of the deer's front legs, but kept the hide intact. Then he made a slit in the corresponding hind leg to thread it through, creating a shoulder strap out of the deer's flesh. He did the same on the other side, and then, like wearing a backpack, he hoisted the entire deer onto his back. The 10-kilometer journey wasn't too long, but it wasn't short either. Crossing wild forests and deep, secluded paths, he himself couldn't believe that at 70, he could still carry an entire deer that far. And once he got on the boat, he safely returned home. After cleaning the prey, he finally gets to eat red meat again, after a long time without it. Winter's arrival also means the start of the fur trapping season. Hunting fur-bearing animals is a hunter's main source of income in winter. As an experienced hunter, he certainly wouldn't miss this opportunity. To ensure no one else claimed his trapping grounds, he set off very early for La Bijou Bay. He had lived in a houseboat in this area for about 10 years, so he knew the terrain intimately. Every year, at the start of trapping season, he would come here to set traps for martens and lynx, and this year was no exception. His main target was weasels because they were numerous, easy to catch, but didn't fetch a high price. In the forest, by following their footprints on the ground, he could pinpoint their location. Then he would hang a rotting deer head on a tree and set a trap directly underneath. If a weasel came to steal food, it was almost impossible for it to escape. Daylight is currently very short. After 3 p.m., it's already dark, so he has to make as many traps as possible to maximize his income. Setting traps may seem simple, but it actually requires regular maintenance because ice and snow can jam them, and squirrels or small birds can accidentally trigger them. Without any catch, hunters still have to return for regular checks. After setting their traps, he didn't return to the shelter dock immediately, but stopped by his overwater shack. Due to years of disrepair, the place had severely deteriorated. Looking at the traces, it was clear someone had once lived there, but it hadn't been maintained. Perhaps soon, the hut will be completely submerged, returning to dust. Unable to stay, he had to return to the shelter dock. The next day, he sailed back to the hunting grounds. Almost everyone here knows how to hunt, but not many set traps. This helps reduce competitive pressure. He plans to set a total of 24 traps. Each trip can usually catch about 1 to 3 martens. If processed well, each pelt can sell for up to $200. In the first trap set yesterday, even though a large deer head was hung, nothing was caught. Conversely, the conventional bait trap caught the marten. What's more, it was caught alive, putting $200 in his hands. This is a good start to this year's trapping season. The old hunter caught a marten with his trap. Its fur brought him about $200. Living in the wilderness of southern Alaska, trapping for fur is a source of his only income in winter. The furs look very valuable. But in reality, on average each year, he doesn't earn much. Working an hour only brings in a few US dollars. Today, luck is pretty good. The second mink has fallen into the trap. If classified by size and fur color, this one can be sold for about $150 US. To make a mink fur hat, it takes about 3 to 4 minks of this size. His trapping is not to get rich, but just to make a living. As long as the money earned is enough to sustain a basic life, he will stop immediately. Ahead is the last trap to check for the day. Unexpectedly, inside was the largest weasel today. However, due to its rather pale fur, the buyer downgraded it, so it couldn't be sold for a high price. Overall, on the very first day of trapping season, we caught 3 animals, earning about $500. Consider it an extremely favorable start. Perhaps tonight we should have a celebratory drink. Returning to the sheltered harbor, he will clean the animal thoroughly, proceed with rubbing and cutting, then bring it to the station to be crafted into handicrafts. That way, it can be sold at the best price to the buyer. It's also a civet, but a water civet from the region are not popular. Their fur is not as valuable as mink, but in terms of destructiveness, this species is truly hateful. Today, Kelly received a distress call from Mary, saying that a weasel had appeared in her house. It's as sneaky as a large rat, stealing things and destroying the house. They even eat cat and dog food. Worse, they've made a nest right under Mary's house. If it's fishing and mass smoking season, all the food will likely be ruined and contaminated. Mary was at her wit's end, so she asked Cly, who is good at setting traps, for help. He takes this very seriously, because he doesn't want to see the lives of his neighbor's existence was threatened. He went home. He used a few wooden sticks to make a rectangular frame. He covered it with a breathable metal mesh and sealed it. Finally, he installed the trap mechanism, which was a live trap. Kelly's plan was to catch the otter alive and take it to another bay to release it. Making a live trap is much harder than a kill trap. Did you learn this skill from your grandfather? After finishing the trap, he returned to Mary's house. He baited it with very smelly flying fish, then placed the trap in the shed where the weasel usually frequented. They needed to wait overnight. Only then would he know if this elaborate trap worked. The next day, Kelly arrived at Mary's house early. To his surprise, the trap he had made worked very well. The mink had been caught. Only then could he truly breathe a sigh of relief. His neighbor's plea for help had been answered. He took this mischievous guest, sailed to a very distant bay, and released it back into the wild, unharmed. Meanwhile, the old hunter was carefully checking his rifle. Today he would hunt a black-tailed buck. Before the harsh winter arrived, you have to try your best to fill the freezer with meat. Deer Bay is isolated from the outside world. In the eyes of others, it's a beautiful place, with a poetic bay and narrow wooden walkways. All kinds of wildlife and marine creatures make this place look like a paradise. But only those who have truly lived here for a long time understand how harsh survival can be. He was over 70 and should have been enjoying his old age in a nursing home. But in this sheltered harbor, the concept of retirement didn't exist. As long as he could still move, he had to go out hunting and fishing or face starvation. Because black-tailed deer are extremely wary, he left his fat dog well-fed and sleeping soundly at home. The old man often joked to himself that the dog was becoming more and more like him. Laziness made it fatter and fatter. The weather in the southern Alaskan sea changes rapidly. Soon after setting sail, they encountered wind and rain. That was almost a daily occurrence. Sometimes the weather was even dangerously extreme. Dealing with life sounds simple, praying for myself to overcome it. When he reached the shore where he could hunt, he walked into the forest. As he walked, he used a whistle to mimic the mating call of a deer. It's hard for a deer not to be lured if it hears that. Deer in the forest live very scattered, so hunters often have to move through many hunting grounds. Sometimes with bad luck, it can take 1 or 2 weeks to hunt something. While searching, you must pay attention to surrounding signs like footprints, fresh droppings, or tree bark rubbed off by antlers. As soon as you detect anything unusual, find a spot with a clear view, and continue mimicking deer sounds to lure them in. If you stay in one place for too long and still don't see any prey, then you must quickly change locations. The long hunting trail forced the old man to stop and rest occasionally before he could continue. The dense primeval forest is where deer often frequent, but hunters don't wish to encounter them there, because hunting them is easy, but transporting them is exhausting. As he got older, every time he went out, he would tell Kelly where he was going. If something happened and he couldn't come back, Kelly could lead a search party to rescue him. On a more open patch of grass, he finally found a valuable clue. Very fresh droppings, signs of prey nearby. He sped through the dense forest, wading through a clear stream, but still saw no sign of the deer. This hunt had lasted over a week, making him wonder if he had made a mistake, or if there simply were no deer in the area. Nevertheless, persévérance paye off. He found a tree with a lot of bark, scraped off by antlers. He immediately took out his call and imitated a deer, and this time, a deer finally appeared. He immediately gave chase and quickly spotted a stag. The opportunity passed in a flash. He quickly aimed and pulled the trigger at the right moment. The bullet hit its mark on the first shot. This was probably the longest hunt I've ever had. Perhaps it's due to old age, which has diminished my hunting abilities. Or it could be the increasingly fierce competition among hunters, causing the deer population to plummet. No matter what, he finally got the prey he wanted. At least, he won't have to worry about food this winter. With this deer meat, he won't have to worry about food this coming winter. Of course, he didn't keep it all to himself, because they still have to share with the dog. Most residents of the typhoon shelter are poor. They don't earn much money all year round, but as long as they work hard enough, they can still eat well and dress warmly. They even live more comfortably than the rich. Stuart and David's refrigerators were empty, so they went out to sea to catch large flounders. Both of them had worked in business before, not super rich, but they had a little something saved up. However, after arriving at Windbreak Bay, they realized the pace of life here was what they had been pursuing their whole lives. Even if they had to live frugally later, they were still willing and always happy. For the residents of Windbreak Bay, fishing is a way of life in the open sea. Abundant resources, but getting fish to the table is not easy, because the weather here is unpredictable. Wind and rain at sea are common. Being alone, facing such an environment is extremely dangerous. Therefore, local people often go fishing in pairs to ensure safety. Before catching halibut, they needed to prepare fresh bait, cut into pieces and hooked. This time they used about 30 hooks, all attached to a long line, hoping to catch some big fish. With their new gear, they headed to a sea area they had never visited before. They picked a good spot, dropped all their gear, and went back to wait. The next day, they met at the dock to return to the fishing grounds and check. Winter was If they didn't catch any fish in the next few days, they would have to find another way to get food. This year, the fishing at the windbreak wasn't good. Many people didn't catch enough, so they had to buy expensive food, flown in. Nature doesn't favor anyone, so Stuart and David's luck wasn't any better. They put in a lot of effort, but didn't catch anything and even got their gear stuck in the rocks. To avoid sinking the boat, they had to cut the ropes. They suffered many losses, but couldn't give up. Otherwise, they would starve. Returning to the sheltered bay, they rummaged through their belongings and gathered them. They assembled a new set of tools. They moved to a different location and set the traps again underwater. Another day passed, and they returned to check. They pull the buoy onto the boat and slowly reel in the line. As the line tightens, they feel a slight vibration, indicating a fish has bitten. But only when they pull it to the surface do they know what it is and how big it is. After many days of effort, they finally catch their first halibut. It's not big, but it's better than nothing. The fishing line was still taut, indicating more fish were behind it. They nervously continued to reel it in and discovered a giant halibut, weighing at least 50 or 60 kilograms. As soon as it was pulled onto the boat, they had to immediately secure it with ropes, because someone in the bay once had their leg broken by the tail of such a large fish. A bountiful harvest. They returned content, hauling the large halibut to the dock. They cut the pristine white flesh into buckets to be canned for long-term preservation. The harsh winter was approaching, and only with this amount of fish could they safely get through it. Besides stocking up on food, Fuel was also incredibly important. So, another resident named Mary had to gather firewood, alone in the wilderness, which terrified her due to lurking predators who might be calculating how many meals your flesh would provide. Chopping down trees sounds simple, but it's actually very dangerous, as trees can fall the wrong way or get stuck into another tree, rendering all their hard work useless. But if they want to survive and stay warm through the winter, they have to accept the risk. The logging area is 3 kilometers by water from the sheltered bay, so they have to take a boat and then drive, looking for suitable trees along the way. Not long after, she found a dead tree twice the normal size. She saw it as a small challenge. She cut a notch in the direction the tree would fall, then made another cut from the opposite direction. Although the dead tree fell as expected, it got stuck. It's true what they say, what you fear will come to pass. With no one to help, she had to figure out a solution herself. There was a pulley and rope in the car. It just so happens that she can use it. She fixed the pulley to a tree and tied a rope to a dead tree. As the pulling force gradually increased, the dead tree crashed down. It also knocked down another tree in the process. Although there was a small mishap, the final result was quite good. She used a truck to pull the logs out of the forest. She cut them into smaller pieces with a chainsaw. Then she loaded them onto the truck and transferred them to a boat to return to the sheltered dock. This wood is enough for you to burn for another 10 days to half a month. Compared to Mary, a novice lumberjack, Curly is truly a postdoctoral expert in the forestry world. Having worked with wood his entire life, he is recognized as a master lumberjack at Windy Harbor. He's been in a bad mood these past few days because his dog of 14 years suddenly passed away. He was inconsolable, like a child. To fill the void in his heart, he adopted another dog. He wanted it to be his hunting companion. Callie had to arrange a lot of training for the dog. In an environment like this, having a hunting dog is extremely important. It can help find targets and retrieve prey. Early warning of predators. The most crucial and difficult step is getting it used to the loud sound of gunshots. The most direct and effective way, of course, is to take it hunting. An untrained hunting dog is like a child learning to walk. In this harsh environment, Callie had to put in a lot of effort to keep him out of trouble. They came to a small pond and found some wild ducks. Due to the considerable distance, he accidentally startled the prey when approaching. Just as they flew away, Callie pulled the trigger. Although he didn't shoot them, it was a relief that the dog wasn't afraid of the gunshot. It seems he was born to be a hunting dog. The tide is changing now, so they can't stay long. They have to sail back to the sheltered harbor. Living in the Alaskan wilderness, how hard is it to have a barbecue? To get charcoal, Sam has to build a charcoal kiln first. Here, charcoal has many uses. Grilling meat is just one of them. A more important use is to improve the soil, which is poor in nutrients locally. With it, they can grow vegetables and good food, and thus achieve the goal of self-sufficiency for the local people. Here, you can't buy materials to build a stove. Air freight is ridiculously expensive, so he had no choice but to scavenge from the junkyard. He searched around and found a propane tank. He had actually noticed this tank for several days. This is debris that drifted from offshore into the harbor, and now it can be repurposed. Everyone knows that a forge made from a gas tank works very well, but if there's still residual gas inside, a tiny spark would be enough to ignite the whole village. Therefore, the initial preparation must be extremely careful. Sam turned the valve, sniffed, and indeed, there was still a gas smell. So after bringing the tank back to camp, the first thing he did was completely empty it. He found the punches inherited from his uncle to remove the protective ring on the valve. Most of the tools were left by his predecessors. Every time I use it, it brings back countless memories. He used a hammer to tap the punch to separate the protective ring from the cylinder body. Then he turned the valve. He discovered that there was indeed something still inside. He didn't expect that even though it was leaking, there was still pressure inside. Cutting it directly at this point would definitely be very dangerous. So he decided to fill it with water. Use a hammer and pipe wrench to remove the valve. Then add water to expel all the gas to ensure safety. Meanwhile, he found a barrel of waste oil. Cut off the top lid. Cut a square hole at the bottom for an air intake. Then cut the gas tank. Weld the handle and lid. Finally, place the entire stove inside the oil barrel. The biochar is now complete. He's turned a pile of trash into a new tool, bringing some true joy and a complete sense of accomplishment. Now, he's going to find some wood to test how the kiln works. Sam chooses red alderwood. This type gives the best flavor for grilling meat and smoking fish. Into the forest, I spotted a deer fly and couldn't help but catch it. It shouldn't be appearing this season, which shows that climate change is indeed an undeniable truth. Hunters hate this type of fly because they'll swarm the meat as soon as the prey dies. I chopped some small dry branches and dragged them back to camp, sawing them into about 10-centimeter logs. Fill the bottom of the kiln with firewood, and place small poplar logs into the gas cylinder in the middle. Cover it and burn the firewood outside at full capacity. Once the wood inside is burned, it will turn into charcoal. Meanwhile, Sam is repurposing the gas cylinder that ran out of charcoal. He cuts, welds, grinds, attaches a base, and finally adds an iron grate to the top. A complete grill was born. At this point, the charcoal was almost ready, and when he opened the kiln, the result made him extremely satisfied. He had worked hard to get the amount of charcoal he wanted. Grinding all of it could allow him to mix a lot of soil. But at this moment, what he craved most was a grilled meal. I've been craving them. These venison sausages are from last year's hunting season. Grilled, they still look delicious. From the food and utensils to the charcoal, everything was made by his own hands. And the moment the food entered his mouth, he felt that everything was worth it. In a sheltered cove on the southeast coast of Alaska, huntress Mary is heading into the woods today to hunt for a black-tailed deer. Deer hunting season is at a critical stage. To safely get through the upcoming winter, she needs to fill her freezer with venison. For her, it's an incredibly difficult task, because while hunting, it's very easy to run into wolves or bears. There was a time when she was walking her dog in the woods, and when she stopped, she saw a wolf bearing its fangs in a nearby bush. It can be inferred that it had been following them for a long time, waiting for its chance to act. For a widow who has to manage alone, that's an incredibly terrifying feeling. But to survive, she had to face those risks. She drove her small boat away from the dock to avoid the wind. After a few nautical miles, she had to switch to a new vehicle to reach the hunting ground. In the forest, she searched for prey, while always being wary of wolves or bears. Today, her luck was quite good. She quickly found fresh deer tracks, and took out her whistle to imitate a doe's call. During mating season, no buck can resist that sound. As soon as they hear it, they'll come from everywhere. However, this sound can also attract wolves or bears, so she must always remain vigilant. Despite living in the wilderness for years, Mary was still deathly afraid of wolves. The fear of gray wolves was deeply ingrained in her. A North American gray wolf, nearly 2 meters long, weighing over 100 kilograms, intelligent, cunning, and cruel. Few people wouldn't be afraid of them. But to survive, she still had to face that fear. Just then, a strong gust of wind blew through. In the dense forest, it's easy for dry trees or broken branches to fall on you, so she quickly moved to a more open area. There, she discovered many deer tracks. Everything was perfect, except for the deer appearing. Ironically, at that very moment, a pile of white bones appeared before her. No need to guess, it was caused by a wolf. Mary's heart sank, and fear immediately welled up. She needed to leave immediately to avoid being noticed by the predator. But when she turned around, she realized she was lost. With no other choice, she wandered around aimlessly. She didn't know how long she had been walking. She saw several trees had been cut down. Usually people cut trees near the road for easier transport. Sure enough, the logging road appeared ahead, and her old pickup truck was nearby. Her heart, which had been in her throat, finally settled. As she drove to the coast, intending to return to the sheltered harbor, she noticed whitecaps had already appeared offshore. Venturing out to sea now would probably be even more dangerous, so she decided to sleep in her car for the night. She would return to the hunting ground tomorrow to try her luck. After a long, cold night, early in the morning, Mary woke up in her old pickup truck. Although she was very afraid of gray wolves, Mary still had to return to the hunting grounds to complete her plan of stocking up food for winter. When people are scared, they often scare themselves, to the point where now, whenever she sees dense bushes, she shudders. In reality, there weren't many wolves in this area before, but because there were no natural predators, their numbers, they've grown rapidly. The path is getting harder to find. It must be largely due to the frequent appearance of wolves. Mary could only pray that they wouldn't notice her. The call of the doe echoed through the forest, but received no reply. She could only cautiously move forward to investigate. Just then, a pile of fresh wolf droppings appeared before her. This indicated that a wolf was very close. Where there are wolves, deer will stay away, so this hunt was futile. In the current situation, continuing the hunt was pointless, so she decided to return to the dock immediately, avoiding the wind and planning to find a companion next time. Otherwise, he feared he would fail again. Ever since the 70-year-old man hunted a deer, the basic winter food problem was solved. But to ensure balanced nutrition, he couldn't just eat one type of food all winter. So today, he and his dog went fishing. The best fish here is the emperor flounder, but he doesn't always catch them. So he brings many kinds of fishing rods to increase his chances of a catch. He uses flying fish as bait because it's strong. Smell can attract prey from afar. Living off the sea can bring seafood freedom. But it's definitely not easy. The old man is a true fisherman. I've been a commercial fisherman for over 40 years, so I'm very skilled. Fishing alone at sea is not safe. Before heading out, you must check the weather forecast. Even if it's not always accurate, it still has reference value. Never be reckless when facing nature. Otherwise, you'll pay a heavy price. After encountering strong winds and high waves offshore, the old man decisively turned back to the harbor to take shelter. It's not worth risking your life. For a few fish, there are plenty of fish in the harbor, but not many good ones. In the eyes of the locals, as long as it's not flounder, they are mostly unpopular. Not long after the bait was cast, a fish bit, but when he reeled it in, it was just a small trash fish. So, he immediately released it back into the water. The second one was the same. At this time, many water birds gathered around the area, diving into the water to feed. If they were disturbed by them, the fish would no longer bite, so he had to stop fishing for a while and go home to rest for a day. The weather still hadn't improved, but that couldn't stop him from going out to sea again, because only by trying would he have a chance. The conditions offshore were quite good. The wind and waves weren't too strong. Finding a good spot, he began to cast his line. Very quickly, a fish bit the bait. Don't let the bent fishing rod fool you into thinking it's a big one. It's actually just a small catfish. This type of fish is edible, but it doesn't have much meat, so I'll take it home for the dog as a snack. But these long groupers, we definitely have to keep. Besides salmon, they're among the best. In a place with abundant resources, that's how we choose. Today, we caught quite a lot of fish, and the whole family is very happy. Even though they're poor, they live a luxurious life, in their own way. When you think about it, we work so hard, fighting to survive, just hoping for a day when we can live as leisurely as this. Waking up each morning to enjoy the scenery, fish, hunt, and eat dishes that look simple, but are quite luxurious. No worries about being late for work. No pressure from house or car loans. No need to bother with all sorts of troubles. Just being well-fed and warmly dressed makes for a happy day. Returning to the sheltered harbor, they cut the meat from the grouper's body, leaving the head, bones, and organs to be thrown back into the sea, where small fish, shrimp, and starfish will quickly devour them, completing a natural cycle. The less tasty base become dinner for cats and dogs. A little grouper, a little beer, and dinner is done. To survive the harsh weather in Alaska, firewood is an incredibly important resource. It's used for cooking and keeping the house warm all year round. The logging area is about 5 kilometers from the dock. To transport the timber back, he has to use his old boat. This old, dilapidated boat can no longer be fitted with an engine, but it can still be used to tow logs. Life in the wilderness. If you're not careful, nature will take over everything. This small boat hasn't been here long, but it's already covered in barnacles. If there's no human intervention, it will quickly sink into the sea, becoming trash. Life at the typhoon shelter seems free and easy, but in reality, it's extremely tough. Back then, when Callie first arrived, he was young, strong, and full of life, but soon, like everyone else, due to busy work, he suffered from back pain, knee fatigue, and constant cramps. Even so, it couldn't change his love for this pure land. Having prepared all the logging tools, he drove his new boat, towing the old boat towards his forest. The small boat sped swiftly and smoothly, reaching its destination. The coastline was entirely rocky. If the boat was too close to the shore, the waves would cause it to hit the rocks and easily damage the hull. Therefore, he made an anchor point to keep the boat away from the rocks along the shore. Then came what he was best at and enjoyed most, wielding a large chainsaw to cut wood. Callie entered the logging profession at the age of 15 to earn money for his family. By the age of 21, he was completely free, able to rely on his own abilities and go anywhere. Later, he arrived at the typhoon shelter, where everyone needed firewood, so he decided to stay and settle down, thanks to his skills. His life here was quite comfortable. When he was almost done cutting the wood, the wind suddenly picked up. Immediately after, he heard a clang. Perhaps the strong wind caused the small boat to hit a rock. He went to the shore to check, and found that the temporary anchor was gone. This speedboat cost him about $7,000. For the locals, who have almost no income, that's a huge amount of money. So, he has to quickly find a new anchor to secure the boat in deeper water. Nearby, there's a parking lot with many scrap cars. After searching for a while, he found a broken car jack. It was quite heavy and could be used as an anchor. He tied a rope to it and dropped it into the water. Finally, the problem was solved. For easier transport, he had to chop all the wood right on the beach, then throw it onto the small boat. Taking advantage of the high tide, Callie quickly returned to the dock to shelter from the wind. The price of freedom is to be diligent enough. Otherwise, you will suffer from hunger or cold. Thank you for your interest and for watching. See you in the next episode.